Remember how they tried to break you, how they laughed when you were down, and how they thought they got away with it? Now the tables have turned. You stand in the shadows watching them crumble under the weight of their own cruelty. Every slight they dealt you is now unraveling in their lives, echoing the pain they inflicted. They cannot escape. You hold the power. What goes around always returns. There's a storm circling the lives of those who have wronged you, though they are oblivious to it now. They walk on, smug and unaware, but the ground beneath them is eroding, crumbling inch by inch. You don't need to raise a hand because every step they take pulls them deeper into the quicksand they created. The harm they dealt, the seeds of bitterness and betrayal, have been buried in time, but roots are growing, and the harvest is always bitter for those who plant poison. You are not required to dirty your hands with revenge. The justice that comes for them is far more relentless than any human anger could ever be. It comes in silence, like a fire spreading beneath the surface, unseen but scorching everything it touches. You watch without malice, without rage, only with the calm of someone who knows that divine justice is far greater than any act of retaliation. The universe is a mirror, and what they threw at you is reflected back at them, intensified, multiplied. God's justice is not loud or dramatic, it's woven into the smallest details of life. Their peace becomes elusive. Their relationships fracture, their ambitions turn hollow. The very foundations they built upon now shift beneath them, not by your will, but by a higher law they cannot escape. Trust in this, for the laws of justice, like time, are unyielding. They cannot outrun what is coming, no matter how fast they think they are moving. The pain they caused you is already returning to them, woven into the air they breathe, inescapable, as inevitable as the tide dragging them back under. God's justice moves slowly, but it's more precise than any force you could muster. Those who wronged you were blind to the power they were toying with, thinking they could strike you down without consequence. They thought their actions would fade, like whispers lost in the wind. What they didn't understand was that every act of malice, every betrayal, was setting fire to their own path. They underestimated you. More dangerously, they underestimated the one who stands behind you. You didn't need to respond with rage or retaliation, because your silence spoke louder than their cruelty. While they tore at you, you prayed, trusting in a power greater than their fleeting schemes. And now, the weight of their choices is returning to them, crushing like a landslide, slow but unstoppable. You see it now, their arrogance dissolving, their security slipping through their fingers like ash. They cannot outrun what they've set in motion. The power of divine justice isn't loud or vengeful. It's patient, unshakable, and devastatingly accurate. God's hand is now upon them in ways they cannot comprehend. They thought they could harm you without consequence, but they struck at someone under divine protection. You didn't need to lift a finger. You trusted, you prayed, and now deliverance unfolds, not in thunder, but in quiet, unstoppable retribution. Their peace is fraying, their ambitions turning to dust, all while you rise untouched. Trust in this. The justice of God may be slow, but it never falters. What is due will always come to pass. Betrayal came from those whose hands you once trusted, and their cruelty cut deeper because you had opened yourself to them. You, imperfect as you are, would never have inflicted the same damage on them, for your heart carries a weight they will never know. Their lies, their treachery, and their selfishness were deliberate, but they thought they could escape the weight of their actions, casting their venom behind them as they moved forward unscathed. But no wrong escapes judgment. Now the scales that have tilted against you for so long are shifting. God has seen every tear, every quiet agony you held within. And even though you never sought vengeance, divine justice moves on your behalf. The betrayals they dealt were not forgotten. They were being recorded in the very fabric of time, etched into the stones they now walk upon. The ground beneath them trembles, though they don't yet realize it. The cracks are spreading, unseen. The weight of their wrongs begins to fall back onto their shoulders, heavier than they could have ever anticipated. Their attempts to rise will be met with the collapse of all they built on the backs of their betrayals. The peace they stole from you now deserts them, and their success wilts under the unrelenting force of divine judgment. As the balance shifts, you will feel it, the release, the restoration. You didn't need to destroy them because they are undoing themselves under the weight of God's reckoning. The balance is inevitable, and now it tilts in your favor. They crossed lines that cannot be uncrossed, walking further into darkness with each deliberate step, convinced that their actions would stay hidden. They showed no regret, no hesitation, as if the shadows would cover their misdeeds forever. They underestimated the weight of their choices, thinking they were immune from the consequences. They played a dangerous game, and now the debt they've amassed is coming due. Justice is moving silently, relentlessly toward them. The pain they caused you has echoed back, gathering strength like a storm in the distance. What they did in secret will now flood into their lives, not as a sudden wave, but as a slow, inescapable tide, pulling them under. Every wrong they inflicted on you will be mirrored in their own lives, a reflection they cannot escape. The betrayals, the lies, the wounds they thought would fade, they will now feel each one in full measure. God's justice doesn't rush, but it never misses its mark. It doesn't strike with fury. It unravels slowly, like roots breaking through the foundation of everything they built. Their lives will fracture piece by piece until they find themselves standing in the ruins of what they thought was secure. They will feel the same emptiness, the same cold isolation they forced upon you. They will taste the bitterness they made you swallow. You don't need to act. It's already unfolding. The pain they crafted for you will be their own undoing. This is the law they cannot escape. What they sowed in cruelty, they will reap in sorrow. Justice is already in motion, chosen one, and the time to fortify your spirit is now. The Obsidian Inner Order, powered by Astral Adam with over 200 like-minded chosen ones, offers you access to uncensored videos, truths too powerful for YouTube, and the manifestation secrets that transform trials into triumphs. You've seen the betrayal, the lies, but now, it's your time to rise. The storm they unleashed is reversing, and the inner order is where you'll find the strength to stand tall and claim your destiny. But this isn't for everyone. The Star Chamber Discord server is reserved for high-caliber chosen ones only, and there are only a few slots left. Our community is growing fast, a powerful gathering of warriors sharing their stories, struggles, and triumphs. Your voice belongs here. The link to our Patreon is in the description. Obsidian Inner Order, powered by Astral Adam. Don't miss your chance. Click now, claim your spot, and be fortified for the battles ahead. Rise with us and manifest your victory. God's justice doesn't strike like a thunderbolt. It twists through the fabric of time, transforming everything it touches. Those who wronged you, reveling in their cruelty, will find themselves caught in the very traps they set for you. They enjoyed their malice for too long, blind to the fact that their actions were binding them to an outcome they cannot control. They believed they could escape the reckoning, but now the storm is gathering over their heads. They will not recognize it at first. The downfall will come in ways that reflect their own betrayals, but magnified beyond anything they can handle. The lies they spun will entangle them, tightening around their ambitions and choking them, just as they tried to suffocate your spirit. The paths they walked so confidently will turn into quicksand beneath their feet, and every step forward will only sink them deeper. God's justice is precise, unraveling the false stability they built through deceit. Their success will rot from the inside, a hollow shell collapsing without warning. The harm they caused you is now woven into their lives, manifesting in ways they never saw coming. Their confidence will dissolve into fear, their control into chaos. And the worst part for them? They will see their own hands in their destruction, a reflection of the cruelty they wielded against you. This isn't vengeance, it's a reckoning, delivered in forms they cannot anticipate, but perfectly suited to their betrayals. The same darkness they invited into your life will now flood theirs, consuming everything they thought they held secure. God's justice is relentless, and no one who acted against you will escape it. They stood on the sidelines, pretending they were above you, their eyes always on you, never missing a chance to criticize or cast judgment. They cloaked themselves in false righteousness, convinced that their hypocrisy would go unnoticed. Though they didn't care for you, they couldn't look away, consumed by a twisted fascination with your every step. Jealousy fueled their hate, but they disguised it behind smiles and shallow words, waiting for your downfall. Now, the ground beneath their false superiority is crumbling. They've spent so long watching you, they failed to see their own collapse. Their judgments have turned into chains, binding them to the very hypocrisy they used to mock you. God has seen through their pretense, stripping away the masks they wore so confidently. There is no escape from the truth now. Their hate, jealousy, and deceit have been laid bare. They will face the weight of their own actions, and the spotlight they once shined on you now burns against their skin. The hypocrisy they wielded like a shield is shattering, leaving them exposed. Their judgments have come full circle, and the consequences of their false superiority will crush them in ways they never expected. The time they spent watching you has now turned into their undoing. God sees what they tried to hide, and the judgment they passed so freely now falls on their own heads. They will taste the bitterness of their own hypocrisy as their deceit unravels before them. What they intended for you will now turn back on them, relentless and inescapable. This is the reckoning they never saw coming. They thrived in shadows, weaving deceit, lies, and manipulation into every interaction, believing that their toxic ways would go unchecked. They operated from a place of low vibrational energy, where selfishness and cruelty felt like power. While you stood in alignment with God, choosing a path of integrity, they delighted in the chaos they created, convinced that they could escape the consequences of their actions. They fed off the damage they caused, unaware that the poison they spread would soon turn inward. Now, the energy they once thrived on has become their prison. The same lies they spun are now suffocating them. The manipulation that gave them control is strangling their sense of power. They thought they were untouchable, but the weight of their low vibrations has settled around them like iron chains. Every toxic behavior they indulged in, every deceitful word they uttered, is now coming back to bind them. You remained steadfast, your spirit aligned with something far greater than their darkness. While they moved through life in a spiral of destruction, you stayed grounded in truth. They cannot escape the energy they created, for it has turned against them. The low vibrations they once wielded have become a storm, tearing apart everything they built in their arrogance. What they thought was strength was only weakness disguised, and now they are drowning in the very energy that sustained them. God's justice is precise. They are now trapped in a web of their own making, unable to escape the consequences of the darkness they embraced. You are rising, untouched by their chaos, while they remain ensnared in the toxic vibrations they once glorified. You were set apart for a reason, shielded by the isolation that felt like exile, but was truly your sanctuary. The distance between you and those toxic individuals was not a punishment. It was your protection. They thrived on destruction, their energy corrosive, seeking to drag you down into their spiral of lies and manipulation. But you were lifted beyond their reach, and in that space of solitude, God was already at work on your behalf. They wanted you to engage, to stoop to their level, to entangle yourself in the darkness they inhabited. But you remained still, knowing that lowering yourself to their games would strip you of the divine alignment that surrounds you. You didn't need to fight back, didn't need to speak a word, because their judgment was already sealed. The energy they unleashed into the world is returning to them tenfold, and you cannot afford to stand in the way of that inevitable downfall. Your detachment is not weakness. It is the ultimate power, the kind that comes when you rise above the chaos, watching as the storm they created devours them. Their lies are unraveling, their deceit collapsing, and it is not by your hand. You've been kept separate for this reason, so you could watch unharmed as they face the consequences of their own destruction. Now, you must hold your ground, stay distant. Do not lower yourself, for their reckoning is already in motion. God's justice is precise, and the forces they once controlled are now consuming them. You remain untouchable, held in divine protection, while they fall victim to the darkness they could never escape. Those who once hurt you are now feeling the sharp sting of their own actions. The pain and shame they so freely cast upon you have wrapped themselves around their lives like a tightening noose. They believed they were immune to consequence, that their cruelty would go unanswered. But now, every wound they inflicted is mirrored in their own hearts, each one a reflection of the darkness they tried to bury you beneath. Some will try to come back, to slip back into your life as though nothing has changed. They will speak of regret, but understand this: their time has passed. They can no longer walk the path God has set before you. Their energy, tainted by the very pain they created, cannot coexist with your future. They are bound to the destruction they unleashed, and if you allow them close again, they will drag you back into the shadows from which you've risen. God has separated you for a reason. You are not the same person they once knew, and they cannot follow where you are headed. Their presence would only serve to weigh you down, their energy a constant pull toward the darkness they now dwell in. You have been freed from that, lifted above the reach of their grasping hands. To let them back into your life is to risk being drawn into the storm that is now consuming them. Karma is at work, and the scales are balancing. You cannot allow their remorse or their suffering to lead you astray. You must stay focused on what lies ahead, for their chapter in your life has closed. The pain they inflicted now belongs to them. Let it be. Those who once betrayed you in secret are now crumbling in the harsh light of truth. They thought they could bury their lies and deceit beneath layers of silence, but the ground beneath them is breaking open. Every falsehood, every whispered insult, is now a blade turning against them. The private darkness they operated in has become a public reckoning. Their masks have fallen, and the consequences are no longer hidden. They sowed betrayal, thinking their actions would never catch up to them. But the seeds of deceit have taken root, and now they stand in a field of their own destruction. They mocked you, mistreated you, believing they were untouchable. Now the tables have turned. They are being stripped bare, forced to endure the very pain they so eagerly inflicted upon you. Every wound they carved into your spirit is now reflected in their lives tenfold. There is no escape for them now. They are being consumed by the same forces they once unleashed against you. Their lies, once spun so easily, now bind them, pulling them down, deeper into the pit they dug for themselves. The world sees them for who they truly are, and no amount of scrambling will save them from the collapse. They thought they could outrun the consequences, but divine justice is patient and unyielding. The tables are not just turned, they have been overturned. What they intended for you has boomeranged back with force, leaving them vulnerable, exposed, and defenseless. The downfall is inevitable, and now they stand where they placed you, staring into the abyss they created. You endured betrayal that cut deep, injustice that tried to break you, but it did not. You stood firm, and now, as the dust settles, God is lifting you beyond the reach of those who sought to tear you down. You never asked for greatness, never sought power or recognition. Yet your faith and perseverance have ignited something far greater. While others plotted against you, God was preparing a blessing they could never comprehend. As your enemies fall into the ruins of their own making, you rise, steadfast and unshaken. Their whispers, their lies, their betrayals have no power over you now. They are watching as everything they built on falsehood crumbles, while God elevates you to heights they cannot reach. What they meant for harm has only strengthened the foundation beneath you. You are rising, not by your own will, but by divine purpose. God's plan for you was never hindered by their schemes. In fact, every obstacle they placed in your path has been turned into a stepping stone toward the destiny laid before you. Their downfall only magnifies your elevation. They see it now, the glory that surrounds you, the grace that carries you higher, while their efforts collapse into dust. You are not rising by chance. This is the reward of your endurance. You stood in the storm, and now you stand in God's light, unshakable. Their attempts to destroy you only secured your place in God's divine plan. Now, as they fade into their own chaos, you rise untouched, blessed, and set apart, lifted by a force far beyond their reach. Stay strong, stay focused, and hold fast to your faith. You have already witnessed how God's justice moves, silent but unstoppable. Those who sought to harm you have fallen, not by your hand, but by the weight of their own actions. And while they crumble, you rise. You are the proof that faith, when tested, becomes power. Let no one see you falter. Let no one see you sweat. Continue walking in the knowledge that God's justice is not finished. It is still unfolding for you, shaping your destiny as it dismantles the plans of those who wronged you. Your prayers have turned the tides, and your perseverance has carried you higher. You didn't seek this elevation, yet here you stand, lifted by a force that no one can take away. What they gave to you in cruelty has returned to them, and what you held on to in faith has grown into greatness. Your story is one of victory, and your rise is proof that what goes around always comes back stronger. Now it's your turn to speak. Share your story. Let others know how you stood through the storm and came out victorious. Speak the truth of what happens when you trust in a power greater than the betrayals thrown at you. Let your rise inspire others to hold on to their faith, to trust that no injustice goes unanswered, and that every battle has its reward. Your elevation is just the beginning.